Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. Now in this lecture, we will cover economics related current affairs. So all the important news items with respect to the field of economics from the past 1 week, yes 1 week, will be covered in today's lecture. Now let me say this again because I want to emphasize on the importance of this fact. That is that you have to make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. Otherwise, well, this lecture series won't be of any help. Make it a daily habit. Make it a part of your daily routine. 30 minutes of watching the lecture and 15 minutes of revising it from the notes. Now, the notes can be found on our Telegram channel, and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Okay? All right, then. Now the introduction part is over. Let's straight away dive into today's lecture. So let's begin. So, current affairs, economics, July part 3, and here are the topics that we are going to cover. So, topic number 1 is related to Kerala's record rooftop solar adoption and power shortage. Now, this is a paradox that Kerala is one of the best performing states when it comes to rooftop solar plants. Yet, it suffers from severe power shortage. We'll talk about this weird paradoxical situation. Okay. Then, topic number 2 is recent data on CPI, WPI, and PPI reveals India's economic dependence on China and many other factors. So, we'll talk about this. And the third topic is related to high import dependence on 3 agricultural commodities. Yes, these 3 agricultural commodities, India is already import dependent, and now because of El Nino and deficient monsoon, our import bill because of imports on these 3 agricultural commodities would rise even further, and this is not good news for India. Okay, so these are the 3 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is Kerala's record rooftop solar adoption and power shortage. Now, this is really a paradoxical situation. You see, Prime Minister launched this very novel scheme called Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Bijli Yojana. Under this scheme, the consumers, the households would be incentivized to cover their rooftops with solar plants. Now, that solar plant would generate electricity for their own house, and if they are producing surplus, they can sell that surplus electricity, surplus power to the state electricity board, state grid. Okay, so through this, even households can earn money and take care of their electricity bill as well because they are producing their own electricity. Now, this scheme was launched all over India, and Kerala has been the best performing state. Not best, but one of the best performing states when it comes to the adoption of rooftop solar plants. Yet, the paradox is that despite this high adoption by Keralites and Kerala households, despite this, Kerala suffers from severe power shortages, especially during night time. And understandably so, because solar electricity is useless during night time. So what is this entire matter? Why is Kerala suffering from this paradox? Let's talk about this, okay? So Kerala's record rooftop solar adoption and power shortage. So this was in the news. So Kerala ranks 4th in India's rooftop solar installed capacity as per PM Surya Ghar Bijli Yojana, outperforming larger states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh. However, despite this rapid adoption, it suffers from power shortages. Now, this phenomena or this paradox is because of a particular phenomena associated with solar power, and that is duck curve phenomena. Now, what is duck curve phenomena? Well, all those areas which are heavily dependent on solar electricity, okay, suffer from this. So the thing is, generally it is believed that in summers, the peak electricity demand is during the day. During this time, the thing is that solar electricity is adequate. You are producing solar electricity because the sun is shining bright and high in the sky. So this part is taken care of. But because of climate change and because of heat wave-like conditions, even nighttime temperatures have increased. Okay, nighttime temperatures. Now, during nighttime, people are increasingly relying on air conditioners. This increases demand for electricity even during nighttime. And during this time, what happens is that solar energy is not adequate because sun cannot produce energy during nighttime. That's pretty logical. So there is this severe power shortage. And because of this, state electricity boards or state electricity grids have to procure thermal electricity, coal-based electricity, which emits a lot of greenhouse gases. Yes, makes sense. You employed solar electricity so that you won't produce greenhouse gases. But during nighttime, solar electricity is not coming to your aid, and you have to increase procurement of thermal electricity, which emits greenhouse gases. Now, this deficit is known as duck curve phenomena. And Kerala is basically suffering from this. And let me explain how. Okay. Now, these are the key data points when it comes to Kerala's performance. So, Kerala's total solar installed capacity, this much. Rooftop solar is 81% of state's total capacity. So, there are not many solar parks. Most of Kerala's solar energy comes from people's rooftops. Okay. PM Surya Ghar coverage is adequate state energy mix. Less than 50% of Kerala's total installed capacity. Okay. Solar accounts for less than 50%. Daily power consumption, domestic generation versus external import. Now, this is an important factor which explains why Kerala is also suffering economically. Okay. Domestic production is 15 units and external purchase is 73 units. So, 83% of Kerala's electricity comes from importing it from other states. Now, this is a problem. Okay. Now, what is happening? Day versus night mismatch. Why is Kerala suffering from this paradox? First, let's take a look at reason number one, consumer profile. You should know this, that in Kerala, 75% of electricity demands comes from households. Industry and commercial areas only account for 20% of electricity demand. Now, industrial and commercial areas demand electricity during daytime, mostly. Okay. Had the share of industrial or commercial more in case of Kerala, this problem wouldn't have arisen. Okay. But because more than 75% is household consumption of electricity, and households do consume electricity during nighttime as well. Okay. In industrial states, peak demand occurs during daylight. In Kerala, peak demand occurs at night, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. as you can see in this third point, when solar output drops to zero. Now, remember this word. Okay. Well, households that have rooftop solar plants, they are called prosumers, consumer plus producer, because they are consuming electricity plus producing electricity and selling it also. Now, this is reason number two. Rooftop solar owners, prosumers, use only 36% of their solar power during the day. 64% is sold to the state grid. Okay. But at night, they draw back that 45%. So they produce solar energy, they don't utilize it during the day, but during night time, they have to draw back. Okay. Plus, now these households have solar panels, they have employed more electrical appliances because now they feel they are electricity surplus. So they have more ACs, induction cookers, and they use it during evening hours also. So their consumption has increased. Nighttime consumption has increased. Plus, they are getting back the electricity, surplus electricity they produce during the daytime. So states are left with less electricity because these prosumers are taking it back. Now, what do? Okay. They have to buy that electricity from outside Kerala. Okay, this is the impact. First impact is grid voltage instability because 45% electricity is flowing back during night time. Well, that is of high voltage and that is destroying some of the electrical appliances. This is happening, but this is a minor concern. The bigger concern is extreme financial stress on Kerala State Electricity Board. Kerala relies heavily on thermal and hydro spot market power purchases. So they purchase thermal and hydroelectricity, which is more expensive than solar energy. In a sense that, well, Kerala State Electricity Board procures solar energy from households at lower rate, but thermal and hydro from these factories at higher rate. So it is expensive for them. KSCB receives cheap solar energy during the day, but must buy expensive power during night. Plus, they have inadequate hydropower generation. Over the last decade, Kerala added only 150 megawatt of hydel power compared to 2400 megawatt of solar capacity. They have doubled down on solar. So this is the problem. Now, this problem can definitely be solved. How to solve it? Well, these are some of the policy interventions. Okay. Number one, well, the biggest solution to surplus solar power generated during the day is improve your battery infrastructure, battery energy storage systems. If you produce surplus solar power during the day and you store it in batteries, and during night time you draw down that electricity from batteries, that would solve the problem, right? But currently we have big battery infrastructure shortage. Okay, so this can be done. Then time of the day tariff restructuring. Make solar electricity cheap during the day and expensive during night. Basically, change the electricity rates, tariffs, as per demand supply. And it should be intraday, should change throughout the day. that would basically incentivize more usage during the day and less usage during night time when electricity is expensive. Okay, make it more demand supply. Then third is pumped storage hydro projects. That some hydro projects should store electricity. So how do you store electricity? You use surplus power. You use surplus power and you increase the potential energy of water. You use that electricity to pump water at a height. So during night time, you'll drop that water. It will spin a turbine and produce electricity. Pumped storage systems. Okay, and grid modernization and smart inverters, which would basically be required for this changing tariffs throughout the day. You need smart meters for it. Clear? Because they will calculate your tariff, your bill accordingly. So these are some of the 4 things that can be done to solve this crisis and make Kerala truly a solar energy surplus state. Okay, because Kerala has capacity. All right. Now let's move on to next news item, and that is India's economic dependence on China. And this is very important. You see, inflation data came out recently. Now, consumer price index based inflation was not that high. Then there is another metric that is called core inflation. Core inflation is non-food and non-fuel inflation. So inflation without food and fuel is core inflation. Now, core inflation is demand dependent. And the data reveals that core inflation has remained subdued. That means there is less demand in the economy. Now, you might think that reduced core inflation is a good thing, but it's a bad news. Why? Because that signals that there is reduction in demand, consumption demand in India. And that is not good news for GDP. Plus, there are other things that are happening. Okay. Plus, all these statistics have revealed that we are still dependent on China when it comes to inflation. Now, how so? Let's talk about this. It's a fascinating topic. So listen to me carefully. Okay. So India's economic dependence on China. So Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation and Ministry of Commerce released 3 indices: CPI, Wholesale Price Index, and Producer Price Index. Now, CPI measures inflation at consumer level. PPI measures at producer level. And Wholesale Price Index measures at wholesaler level, the ones who trade in goods in bulk. While all 3 indices showed accelerated headline inflation driven by, Strait of Hormuz crisis, volatile food and fuel prices, core inflation remained subdued. Okay. This divergence offers critical economic insights into India's private consumption, manufacturing profit margins, and reliance on China. Now, I'll explain the entire issue. Take a look at this table. So, as you can see, headline inflation, has increased. Okay. Core inflation is unchanged. Clear? Narrow core inflation is also reduced. So, headline inflation, which is CPI, has increased marginally. Okay. And that is because of, food and fuel. Just a second. Right. But core inflation, that is inflation minus food and fuel, it is subdued. Then there is WPI and PPI. They have increased dramatically. That means goods are expensive at producer level, which is not good news. You see, goods are expensive at producer level, but goods are cheap at consumer level. Now, what does a factory owner do? They buy raw material, make their own goods, and sell it to consumer. Now, for factory owners, raw material has become expensive given the increased PPI. But consumer price index is still low. That means given CPI data. So raw material is becoming expensive, finished good is not that expensive. So the profit margins of corporates are low. Yes, so profit margins of corporates are declining. Plus, there is not enough demand for goods, and that can be revealed, or that can be witnessed through core inflation data. Because core inflation is demand driven. Higher the demand, higher core inflation. Lower demand. That means people are not spending that much on goods and services. So these companies are suffering. Already their profit margins are declining. Now people are also actively not buying their goods. Okay. Now what is the China angle? I'll come to it. But let's take a look at this. So this data reveals that core inflation versus economic growth paradox. So India's GDP generally comes from people's consumption. So if there is high demand, India's economy grows. But core inflation is low. That means demand is low. That should mean that GDP should also come down. but India's GDP is still growing. That means India's GDP is being supported by other things apart from consumption, and that is private investment. Investment has grown, which is supporting India's GDP. Otherwise, India's GDP would have fallen because dominant chunk of our GDP comes from consumption. So this paradox is because of this. Okay. Then profit margin squeeze in manufacturing. I have explained this. The China factor. Cheaper Chinese raw material act as secondary driver dragging down India's narrow core inflation, effectively importing deflation into India's domestic supply chain. Chinese goods are extremely cheap. And because Chinese goods are extremely cheap, India is importing deflation from China. Deflation. This is our dependency. Because Indian goods are expensive, Chinese are cheap. So we are importing those goods. Because we are importing so many Chinese goods, well, inflation has come down. Okay, weird phenomena, but that is true. This is imported deflation from China. Plus, food and fuel are still pretty volatile. And naturally so, because the Strait of Hormuz crisis has not resolved itself. Okay, now when your fuel supplies get blocked because of Strait of Hormuz, everything becomes expensive because transport becomes expensive. Yes, if crude oil becomes expensive, transport services become expensive, transport becomes expensive, every good and service becomes expensive, right? This is happening. Plus, natural gas was also blocked because of Strait of Hormuz. Natural gas is used in manufacturing of fertilizers. Fertilizers are used in food. Food supply would come down, food inflation would go up. So these are second round inflation effects of cutting supply of LPG, natural gas, crude oil. So food and fuel are there, but these factors are also coming out. Now, this is a weird economic situation because profit margins are squeezing. GDP is not growing because there is less demand. For how much time can the private investment sustain India's GDP? After all, at one point of time, demand has to come up. So what is the way forward to get out of this situation? Monetary policy calibration. When headline CPI exceeded the median 4% target, static core CPI indicates that tightening monetary policy could harm recovering private consumption. So RBI should think about reducing interest rates or keeping it constant, but don't increase interest rates because that would harm private consumption. Then supply chain diversification, this is true. Become more Atmanirbhar, reduce your dependence from China. This is a natural thing. And boost private consumption. Rationalization of indirect taxes, okay, direct wage support, give more money to the people, reduce GST on certain items. This would boost consumption and support economic growth. So this is the thing, right? I know it's a complicated topic, but it's important to understand these connections between different measures like CPI, PPI and the overall economy. Okay. Now let's quickly shift our focus to last news item of the day, and that is high import dependence on 3 agricultural commodities. Now listen to me very carefully. Well, NASA scientists, National Ocean Atmospheric Agency of NASA, they have revealed that El Nino phenomena is becoming stronger day by day and it will hit its peak during October, November. Now, whenever there is El Nino, well, monsoon is subdued in India. That is actually happening. But they are also saying that El Nino will peak during October, November. When El Nino is strong, winters are also warm in India, unusually warm in India. Winters are not that cold. Now, subdued monsoon would harm kharif crops in India. Subdued winters would harm winter crops, rabi crops in India. So the current news that is coming out from scientific organizations, it says that this season's kharif crops and rabi crops would suffer. There would be a huge problem in both kharif season and rabi season. Agriculture, this is a bad year for agriculture. Now, if agricultural production would decline, there is demand for certain food items or certain agricultural crops, but the supply in India would decline because of El Nino and all. So where would this extra demand be fulfilled? Through imports. Now, India is going to import these 3 agricultural commodities in bulk because these 3 agricultural commodities are going to suffer the most because of El Nino. And these 3 commodities are, well, pulses, oilseeds, and cotton. Yes, cotton. Now, how? How bad monsoon, bad winters will impact these crops and how it will increase our import dependence on these crops. Let's talk about this, okay? So, high import dependence on 3 agricultural commodities. So, developing El Nino in Central Eastern Pacific. caused a significant deficiency in Indian southwest monsoon, rainfall deficit coupled with forecast of very strong El Nino, okay, in winters will impact Kharif and Rabi both. This would impact vegetable oils, pulses and raw cotton. Okay, now how? Take a look at this. So vegetable oils, well, currently because of low rainfall, their acreage is low. And you have to also remember, these three crops are rain fed, which means that farmers, the kind of farmers who generally grow these crops are dependent on rainfall. They do not have access to good irrigation facilities. So vegetable oils, okay, acreage is down. Then pulses, again, highly rain-fed, acreage is down. In case of raw cotton, there is another problem. During winters, or, well, if rainfall is abundant, that is good. But when rainfall is not that abundant, when there are dry spells, there is a particular pest that eats away cotton crops, and that is pink bollworm. Whenever there are dry spells, pink bollworm multiplies a lot and impacts the cotton crops. So good rainfall is important for subdued pink bollworm activity, which is important for yield of cotton. You understand the connection now? So this is happening. So what is the impact? So National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration of USA says, well, very strong El Nino, October, December. El Nino not only suppresses monsoon rains, but also elevates winter temperatures, which harms Rabi crops. Unlike irrigated crops, like rice, wheat and sugarcane are heavily irrigated. They are not dependent on rainfall. Pulses, oilseeds, millets and cotton are predominantly rain-fed. Plus, pink bollworm, which attacks cotton crop, increases, multiplies during dry spells. So, subdued rainfall is bad news for cotton crops. Okay, this is happening. Now, how can you protect yourself? What are the mitigating steps we can take, which we are already taking? Okay, robust public cereal buffer, central pool reserves of wheat, rice should be enough so that when tomorrow or in future, when there is shortage of wheat, rice or all these crops, well, we have enough saved in our buffers. Then buffer for pulses stock also. So government is maintaining buffer pulse stock also, where they store arhar, chana and many others. So there will be shortage. We don't have to be import dependent. We will offload our buffer stock. Okay, and global market conditions. Unlike post 2022 global price spikes, global agricultural harvests, corn, wheat, soya bean, remain ample. So globally also there is high supply of pulses, oil seeds. That means even if India is import dependent, global prices of these crops would be low as per FAO Food Price Index, global price, international price. So even if India has to import, India will import it at lower price. So that would reduce India's import bill also. In a sense, India's import bill won't be that high even if India is import dependent on this. So these are some silver linings in this bad news, of powerful El Nino. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, what more can be done? Duty structure rationalization, anticipate further tariff cuts on imported crude oil. I mean, import duty would be reduced on these. Biofuel policy calibration, temporarily slowing or shutting down ethanol blended program, because ethanol blended program requires a lot of ethanol. Ethanol would be produced through rice, maize, sugarcane. So if more and more people are going to divert rice, maize, sugarcane for producing ethanol, less would be there for food. Okay, so this food versus fuel debate would be there. You understand? Because of El Nino, food supply would be, I mean, there would be shortage in food supply, and already people are diverting their land towards ethanol production. So that should be stopped. This should be stopped so that farmers should come back to proper food crops. Okay, and climate resilient agriculture. Promote micro irrigation, short duration crops, drought tolerant seeds under National Food Security Mission, and integrated pest management, especially for pink bollworm. Clear? And that would be all. So with that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. I'm sure about it. What you have to do is, if you really want to add more value, then please be consistent and regular with this lecture series. Make it a part of your daily routine. And please do not forget to revise this lecture as well. Revise it from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below. So check it out. All right then. That would be all. I shall see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.